Hey, good morning, guys. It's Friday morning, and we are got a show for you. Alabama Birmingham Blazers are coming to town, and it's not your typical out of conference, cupcake. This is a very good defensive team. Graham, first thoughts before we jump into anything?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Not your typical G5 opponent. UAB's one of the best programs in the group of five. They've won a conference championship and played for a conference championship the last two seasons. Last year, they had a really good team that didn't get to kind of finish out the season due to some COVID issues, but when they did play, they played very, very well, and they're well coached. Bill Clark is a good coach, and their assignment sound, and it's going to be a legitimate challenge for Georgia on Saturday.
Yeah, they shut out Jacksonville State in one of the first games of the season last week and picked up sort of where they left off defensively. I'm going to show you this is just one game, obviously a small sample size, but you can see they had a negative EPA and really low yards per play, an extremely low success rate. I mean, obviously this is not opponent adjusted because clearly the Georgia defense against Clemson has better stats all the way around, and they were not playing Jacksonville State. So that gives you, it's all relative, they stuffed Jacksonville State. And next graphic here, here's our offensive plays. You can see that they actually had a really good offensive game. I was reading Bill Connolly, sort of kind of describes the Blazers. They've never really been that good offensively. Since they've returned to football in 2017, I think they've never been barely in the top 100 of SP plus. But they had a good game against Jacksonville State, and 8.5 yards per play and a 55% success rate. We've got some plays we'll show you and some of what they did really well. Let's see here, and then here's their rush offense. Not great. A decent success rate, but not a good yards per play and a negative EPA on 35 rushes. I mean, Georgia was bottled up too, but again, this is not opponent adjusted, and I suspect that they're going to have a hard time running the ball on Georgia, and I expect our running game to have some success because we're going to look at here's their pass offense. They obviously had a great game. They've got a senior quarterback, and I think I read they've got 6 or 7 super seniors too. So
they do.
Sure.
Yeah, they got a lot of COVID seniors.
You can see what everyone was talking about, and some saying it was part of the game plan to get that ball out of JT's hands. But you can see a super low yards per play on the passing offense and a pretty pedestrian, a bad success rate on pass offense.
I mean, one thing I will say about their pass offense, and we're going to get into some plays, but they did have some pretty substantial yardage off of like little jet sweep passes where the quarterback literally just like dropped the ball into the hands of the wide receiver as he was running by, and that stuff counts as passing yards.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't see a ton of downfield kind of picking apart defense. Like these numbers may be a little bit misleading.
Oh, for sure. It's small sample. It just kind of it does show you they when they play an opponent that they can beat, they do things well, and I think it's a different matchup. Obviously, the line's down to 25 or 20, 24, 25 right now. It opened at close to 28 when before the JT news broke. They had a good rush defense. I mean, again, I think Georgia's may not have their full offense ready to go, but I suspect they're going to have a successful offensive game. And here's their defensive explosiveness. This is about Georgia. I mean, Georgia only gave up 16 successful plays and a negative. I mean, it's just like,
12.5% success rate. Jesus.
Yeah. That may be. You're right. Yeah, it was, but that negative 3.04 on their. I mean, they basically had that one pass play for 40 yards, I think, and everything else was pretty bad. So I mean, again, the Georgia offense was all the talk of the games last week. So this is some of the stuff that we track and follow, and it really shows you how good a defense we had on Saturday.
100%. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, huh?
Yeah.
News leaked out of Athens earlier this week that JT Daniels has some sort of core muscle injury. Some outlets have reported that to be an abdominal strain, but he is questionable for Saturday, and there's a lot of insiders that are kind of speculating we'll see Carson Beck finally. So, what's your initial reaction to that?
You and I talked about it. I was pretty upset, just knowing that it just felt like,
you were.
It just felt like one of these, like, if it lingers into October is what I fear. I feel like by mid-October, I'd like to see our offense at its full potential. And I just think that, we talked about, JT was the difference maker for this Georgia team. And, lo and behold, he was limited on Saturday. They got the win, which is, awesome. It's one of the best wins of the last 15, 20 years, I would think. And, but I want to see him get healthy. I want definitely some positive news. And if he plays at all on Saturday, that's fantastic. He may not, but if he makes a trip to Nashville, I'll be resting a lot easier.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I don't know how the next few weeks are going to look.
We're showing some Carson Beck plays here. Did you want to break these down? I just kind of rolled them.
Well, I do want to say that a lot of these guys that he was throwing to in the G-Day game was kind of the second group of receivers with Darnell Washington mixed in. And I have no idea if Darnell's playing on Saturday or not, but point being, like, Brock Bowers right there, and Jalen Johnson was catching one of those passes. Like, he's been working with the group of receivers that we saw Georgia play last week for the last couple of years on the scout team, So I think for Beck, we're going to see a guy who maybe has better chemistry with these receivers than we saw from JT last week, just because he's played with them a lot more.
Yeah, and he's playing against a good defense, and even second-team reps, or scout team reps or whatever. He's playing against a good defense. So
yeah, you saw what Channing Tindall and some of those guys did when they rotated in last week that are technically second stringers on the Georgia defense. Like, those guys can play. They're 4 and 5 stars too. So here's UAB's defense. And before we kind of get in the defense, I would say, as we mentioned, UAB – probably the best team in Conference USA. I want to stress that of this stretch in the schedule coming up here of South Carolina, Vanderbilt, UAB, they're by far the best team Georgia is going to face in that time. They're not a conference opponent, but there's a couple conference opponents this year that are really, really bad. So just because they're not an SEC team, don't discount them. They're deep. They're senior laden. They've got super seniors, like you mentioned, due to the COVID rules. And they've been into SEC stadiums a lot before. 2003, they came to Athens, and that game was 16-13, and Georgia barely pulled that out of the fire back in the Rick days. So not to be overlooked.
They played in 2019 at Tennessee as well. I think I remember specifically because Marler was talking about it in his podcast. He got suckered into betting on Alabama Birmingham to cover, but and I think it was a closer game, and then Tennessee pulled away in the second half. But they, like you said, they played in some big stadiums, and I was reading up a little bit on them, and and it's good for their program. Obviously, this is why these games are scheduled. It's good for their program, and they're excited to play. This is their probably biggest game of the year until a bowl game or a Conference USA championship game for sure.
Totally. And Kirby said it this week. I pulled a quote from his press conference. He said, "We're playing a good football team. And I know none of y'all believe me when I say that, but I know a good football team. I know a good conference, and I know a well-coached football team when I see one." And he's not really ever been one to do the Lou Holtz routine where he hypes up the opponents like they're the 85 Bears or the 72 Dolphins. So I think that's a legit statement, and just from watching their film and breaking it down, I think we both believe that as well about UAB.
All right, let's get into this. We only have the Jacksonville State game, but I think it'll show us a lot. It'll show you who the players have got and some of their tendencies, and let's get into it.
Yeah, so they played 34 guys last week. They're deep. They run 4 down linemen, and they look organized at all times. Their safety is good, and he will read plays quickly. That's him coming over there. But Beck can't be floating lazy balls down the middle, and their linebackers run well to the sideline.
They definitely. I think that Jacksonville didn't have a lot of downfield threats, so they were able to play up But they executed well and they tackled really well. We'll show you some PFF grades to that point.
I mean, that DN does a good job sitting on things and forcing the pitch there. It's good. It's good coaching. It's well disciplined, and you're going to see right here another play where you just see good speed and anticipation coming off that edge and blowing that play up. So they didn't have any sacks last week, but they did get a lot of penetration. The Jacksonville State quarterback's pretty mobile, and probably if he wasn't as mobile, you would have seen some bigger havoc plays. One weakness I found with him is the DB at the top of the screen there, number 8, is a guy named TD Marshall. Great name, TD Marshall. But he can be had a little bit when he runs back into coverage. He gets his back turned a lot. You saw there, kind of lost on the play. And he's not really backpedaling on a lot of these. He's turning his back to the quarterback and running. So I think that's an area where Georgia can get some plays on him.
That's a great observation. I mean, and that's something that, if we picked it up, I'm sure, Monken did. So
totally.
We'll be throwing it at number 8.
Yeah. And, this is one of those kind of plays coming across they do a good job. Their assignment sound, and that RPO concept that we just showed there, he did a very good job of sitting there and waiting and not biting on the fake handoff. They did get gashed a little bit last week in the running game by Jacksonville State. It wasn't consistently enough for Jacksonville State to win this game, and they got down and had to pass a lot. Here, can we pause for a second?
Yeah, here comes the Alabama defense, so we'll hold on here. Yep.
Yeah, but I think Saturday is the type of game where Georgia's offensive line can dominate this game. UAB does have a very good D-line. It is true that they had a D lineman who transferred to Auburn because he wasn't getting very many snaps, and he played a lot of snaps for Auburn last week. So there is talent there, but Georgia can still handle that D line and road grade, and especially I think on the outsides, like we saw towards the end of the Clemson game, where they got those guys pulling and creating some outside run lanes. Zeus and Milton and all of those guys could have a lot of success.
Yeah, here's that's our defense. Sorry, hang on.
I pulled this just to to kind of show Georgia played an all-time good defensive game last week, and you can see how those guys graded out from PFF. You see lots of 80s and high 70s, and then this is UAB, and they played an FCS team. So like we said, this isn't opponent adjusted, but grade by grade, if you go down that list, it looks very similar to what you saw from Georgia's defense. So just they're coming off a really good defensive performance, and they've already shown the season that they're well coached and they know what's going on, and they're in the right places at the right times.
Yeah, I sorted this by snap count, so you can see who's on the field the most.
Nice.
And I was actually surprised at how few, Jordan Davis has only had, according to PFF, 28 snaps on defense. So interesting. I know those guys don't play. They've got specifics, but I found that pretty interesting and stuff.
Right, and one other thing I'll put in there about UAB's defense is just their 2020 national ranks. And again, their schedule was pretty weak because of COVID, but they were 7th in passing yards allowed, 7th in total defense, and 7th in third down defense. So basically all of that unit came back, and they look good again.
Yeah, I've said it a couple times. Their 2020 defensive success rate was 36%. They played well.
Let's check out the offense.
All right, let's do it.
So their quarterback, Tyler Johnson III, fifth-year senior, went 17 for 21 for 320 and 2 touchdowns last week. But Jacksonville State gave him a lot of easy throws. They tried some deep shots like that. And if they get a guy that open against Georgia, they have to make that catch and make that throw to I think, have a shot of winning this game or staying in this game and keeping it tight. He had another kind of bomb play, which I think this is it right here, where had the guy open and missed a little bit. So I don't know that he's – oh, wait.
He's scrapped. Yeah, that's a little, where he scrapped and scrappy little play got out of the pocket and saved.
Yeah, they gave up some pressures last week to Jacksonville State, and I think if I'm a UAB fan, that's what worries me the most. If they're giving up pressures to Jacksonville State, then that Georgia D line is going to be camped out in the backfield all day. Here's another nice, that's a nice throw. There's a lot of space in the middle. I don't think Georgia's secondary is going to give him that kind of time. And then, watch out for some trickeration too. That's a double reverse pass. But what I took out of this is if they're going to if they had to pull that play out of the playbook against Jacksonville State and burn that onto tape against an FCS team, that probably doesn't bode well for their offense in a game against Georgia. Looking at their run game, they didn't run block super well. I don't think these guys can get 4 or 5 yards a pop consistently on Georgia. They barely did that against Jacksonville State. That play right there is a 7-yard gain, but against Georgia's speed, he's not getting that corner and coming around that edge. Again, penetration in the backfield on a 3rd and 2, 4th down, they have to punt. Couldn't get 2 yards there. They did run a lot of these little end-around pop pass kind of jet sweep actions that I was talking about earlier. And those did count as passes, but they function as run plays. But I feel like the fact that they couldn't just line up and run vanilla stuff on Jacksonville State is a bad sign for them in this game. They have some athletic guys, but it's against a Georgia, he's tackled probably before he gets to that edge. Against Georgia, that number 12 there that can't catch him is running a 4-4 or a 4-5 and taking him down a couple yards past the line of scrimmage. They also struggled with fumbles last week. They lost 2 in the run game to Jacksonville State. Fumbles are kind of a luck stat, so I don't want to put too much credence into that, but here's one of them, and just a good job by JSU getting a helmet on the ball. So I think that Georgia can shut down that run game and force them to pass, and if they do that, I think they'll get a good pass rush, and if they get that good pass rush, I think you see lots of sacks or some interceptions thrown with Johnson trying to get the ball out and being under fire. So, when you look at this from an advanced stats standpoint and look at what UAB has done the last couple of years and realize they're a very good program, I think this game gets really worrisome. And then when you sit down and watch the tape and compare that to what you just saw from Georgia against Clemson and the athletes that Georgia has running around on both sides of the ball, but particularly on the defensive side of the ball, then it really feels like a mismatch. And that upset potential and the fact that Carson Beck is starting and some of these things that I know there's a lot of gnashing of the teeth over right now, all of a sudden don't become that worrisome, at least in my perspective. What do you think?
Oh, I'm not worried about this game at all. I think it's a great, we're still not healthy, but Georgia's so deep and has recruited so well. So if anything, we get, Beck gets a start, which, he's clearly earned. And, I'd like to see Marius Mims get in there. I just think it's a good opportunity to, build depth, and that stuff matters come November. If you've got guys that have playing time, so I'm excited to see what we have. I'd certainly love to see Darnell. I'd love to see a healthy Akiris, but I still think that Georgia's gonna. And I'm excited to see Carson Beck actually. I would have loved. My dream scenario. Well, not dreams so much, but no, I would have loved to have seen JT play, a healthy JT play for a quarter and a half or 2 quarters, and then let Carson play the second half. So,
I'm with you. We haven't seen Carson Beck throw a pass yet in a real game. So that's exciting because, there was a lot of reports at times over fall camp that he was outperforming Daniels in some of these scrimmages and looked really good. I think he's got more of the gunslinger mentality. So he's probably a little more prone to turnovers, but he also may be a little more prone to the highlight throw deep down the field. I'm under the impression he has the biggest arm of anybody in that room. So that's interesting, especially with Arian Smith out there. Can we finally find a quarterback that won't underthrow Arian Smith when he's running wide open at full speed on a go route, which is hard to do. You know what I'm saying? He's really fast, but like, what do you think this game's going to look like just from a scheme standpoint? Do you think that Georgia just like grinds the ball and,
I
runs
think
it
it's
12 times?
No. I don't think that's all. I think because, if, like I said, if this is a lingering injury to JT, then we need to see what we've got. I suspect that I think it'll be a normal pass to run distribution. I don't think we're going to pull out any of, their, like you talked about with that, the trick play that the Blazers ran. I don't think we're going to see any of that, but I do think we're going to see close to a full offensive playbook. Because again, this is an opportunity to see what Carson has, and I think it'll be I think it's going to look totally different game plan than Clemson. I think it's going to look much more like what we expected to see. It's just going to be number 5, right? Carson's number 5 instead of number 18. So
15.
All right. Yeah. So no, I think we're gonna, and I think a lot of running backs are gonna get touches. I think we're gonna see Kenny McIntosh get some. This is why you have these games to get these reps for these guys. So I think Georgia's gonna cover. I think Georgia's gonna put up some points.
I like it. That would be nice. I think I have kind of erred towards the side of Georgia's just gonna pound the ball and go run, play action, run, play action for a lot of the week. But the more that I've thought about this, the more that I'm starting to kind of swing over to your side on this, because I think the reality is that, like you said, if Daniels has a lingering issue, you got to figure out what kind of hand you're holding with Beck, because you do still have Stetson Bennett on the roster, and you probably need to know which one of those guys you want to put in the game if something happens to Daniels in a really big game, where you need a quarterback that can come on, and maybe you're in a tight game or you're down and you need somebody that can come in and lead the offense and be dynamic with their arm. I also think that against Clemson, having some of these starting and more experienced wide receivers out was noticeable and made things more difficult. Against UAB, these starting wide receivers that we're going to see tomorrow are still going to have an athletic advantage over most of the guys in the secondary they're facing, and still are going to be able to stretch the field. So I think if you're smart and you're Georgia, you go out, figure out what you have with Carson Beck, but probably even more so, you go out and you get these guys on tape making good plays down the field in the passing game, and you develop confidence and depth in that wide receiver room. And then as you get Jackson, Burton, Pickens, Washington, whoever else, possibly Gilbert, back healthy as the season goes on, you get to December and Alabama's game planning for you, and they have to plan for an 8 to 10 deep wide receiver room, and that's a nightmare for a defensive coordinator. So I think there's an opportunity here for Georgia to put some stuff on film that will create headaches for opponents down the road, and also just strengthen their own room there with the pass catchers, to where they have confidence that whoever's rolling out there into the route is capable of making a big play.
Yeah, this game looks so much different than it did the preseason. We all knew that that was going to be a good team that we're going to face, but it just, with the questions that came out from what we played with on Saturday night versus Clemson, it's certainly even that much more interesting.
It is,
and we have so much talent, and I know we love Darnell and what he can bring, and we love Kyrus and how reliable a wide receiver is, and we miss Pickens and we want JT, but those guys that haven't earned that or haven't gotten that playing time are really, really good players, and we're fortunate. We're fortunate to. All of those guys you talked about could be battling, if not getting playing time on a lot of SEC schools.
Right. Like Brock Bowers, we saw him ball out Saturday night. Him and Beck have chemistry already. You could see that was pretty easy to recognize in the G-Day game. Like, those two were finding each other and they had a rapport, and Beck put some balls to Bowers in some tight windows that Bowers went up and got. So I think Beck will be comfortable tomorrow. I'm excited to see a guy like Justin Robinson, who is 6'3", 6'4", and in the 200s, and apparently runs like a 4.4, and he was blocking really well on the outside at times last Saturday night, but we have yet to see him catch a pass in a Georgia uniform. Same with A.D. Mitchell, man.
Yeah.
like Robinson and Mitchell on the outside are weapons. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, just to combat. I mean, I think, and also it's an opportunity to clean up a lot of things. We saw some issues on the offensive line and some issues with downfield blocking. Shout out to 3-year letterman downfield blocking, but but no, I mean, it's a chance to clean that stuff up, and yeah, I'm excited to see that. Well,
do you have a score prediction?
Like I said, I think Georgia's going to cover. I could see a 34-10, 34, maybe even 34-7 game. I don't think they're going to be able to score much at all. As we scrubbed through those plays, that was a scoreless game until midway through the second quarter. So yes. It's not like that offense is, they didn't impose their will against Jacksonville State. They wore them down and had some big plays in the second half of that game. So I think, to your point, that this is an outstanding defense, and I think they're going to want to play to a shutout. I really do. So I'm saying Georgia's going to score some points, and I like 34-37, and 10 or less for UAB.
All right, yeah, I'm with you there. I think we probably see a turnover or two by Georgia that gives UAB a short field, and they might get a couple field goals and maybe like a late touchdown with some backups in. So I'm going to go 44-13, and I think that we will have the beginning of a quarterback, I won't call it controversy, but a quarterback conversation on Sunday morning.
Nice. All right, let's do some housekeeping. Hang on a second. I'm going to grab something.
Yeah.
All right. So finally, through the supply chain issues, we have acquired hats. We will have FTMF hats on dogstats.com. And also, there you go. So we're going to have those as possibly as early ready to ship next week. So go to dogstats.com. I know a lot of people have been asking about them and stuff. So, and also we've got large bumper stickers, right? These are sweet. Large bumper stickers. And I know that some people are waiting for their reviews. They're in the mail, and you actually, because you waited, you get one of these too. So shout out to Fletcher and Blake and stuff. And we have these, and also we're shipping next week, hopefully, some Christopher Smith logoed commemorative 10-3 Clemson stickers. They're on the website too. Those are $8, and a lot of this revenue and profits we're sharing with Chris as part of the him being an ambassador for our show. We were obviously, I don't even sure. I know I talked about it a lot, but I don't even know how excited we were for him. He's such a great kid, and to have such a huge moment in such a huge game was really, really special. So if you want to support, so if you want to support Chris and get a sticker to put on your Yeti mug or on your car or your golf cart, those will be on the website and shipping next week. And I'm excited, man. This is football. I think last week I was a little overwhelmed with everything we had going on.
I know, man. So was I. Yeah, so, it was a lot.
This was a great show that you did for us, Graham. And you've even just a few minutes of play, as you can see what we're going to be playing with. So I know that people, and lots of great comments on YouTube. Please keep those comments coming. We love to hear what you guys think about our show. Even the stuff we need to know, like our audio sucks. We appreciate that. And
yeah, totally. Let us know.
Yeah, and then please consider subscribing on podcasts and leaving us a review there and all that stuff. So go Dogs, FTMF. Graham, what else you got? Is it?
Thank you guys for watching. We've seen a big uptick in engagement lately, and you guys have been, I think, like our best advertising, going out there and sharing our stuff and telling your friends about it and giving us credit when we get stuff right and not giving us too much hell when we get stuff wrong. And just really it's made a lot of the work that we put into this so worthwhile and so rewarding. Just every time we hear from one of you guys, it, I think, reinvigorates us and makes us feel like we're on the right path. And the amount of views that we're seeing on YouTube and amount of downloads on podcasts is starting to hit that exponential growth curve, and that's really, really exciting. And so thanks to you guys, the listeners, and thanks to you, Josh, for putting on a great show. And go Dogs, man.
Go Dogs.